That's what I was waiting for. Fireworks. We're doing fireworks instead of this crap. But anyhow. Yeah. Fuck.
It's not Coyote.
Where?
Right around the curve there.
What's up, everybody? KT here. Once again with another how-to. With another how-to on the 97 Tahoe. My last video was alternator replacement. Today we're going to be doing steering gearbox. When I bought the truck, I knew it had some suspension issues with the front, and the first thing we need to do is get the steering gearbox changed out. Also, the Pitman arm is worn out, and it's got just a tiny bit, I mean, what translates into maybe a 1/16 of an inch, maybe 20 thousandths, 30 thousandths of travel on that Pitman arm can literally be 15-20 degrees in your steering wheel. So I've also got a new Pitman arm, and we're going to be taking both of those off, the old ones off the truck, and put some new ones on. I'll take you through the steps. First things first, what I did do was remove the stabilizer bar, anti-sway bar, whatever you want to call them. It's a pretty big one. It's about maybe an inch or inch and an eighth. It's pretty thick on the front end, and where it bolts to the frame on both sides, you've got a couple of bolts with 10mm heads on them, and I've already removed those and dropped the sway bar down, so it's down and out of the way. So that's step number one, is to get those down and out of the way. And then also there's a plastic collar on top of the steering box that has a little ring or a little hook around one of the power steering hoses. You have to remove that and then slide the plastic cover up so you can get access to the coupler where it actually binds down on the shaft for the input shaft for the steering gearbox. So that's going to be the next step, but let me see if I can get some light on the subject and get you guys down there. Stand by. Okay, so as I'd mentioned, here are the two bushings for the sway bar. Got it disconnected here and right there. Got two bolts, 10mm heads, and they bolt right to the frame there and there. So you're going to take those and just let the sway bar drop down. It's pretty heavy, so be careful when you drop it. Drop the sway bar down. Next is going to give you access to the Pitman arm here and the linkage in the back. And oh, son of a, I didn't even think about getting a pickle fork for that. I'm going to see what kind of luck I have banging it out. First things first, I'm going to go ahead and get the steering loose up here. I mentioned I took the plastic collar, whoops, sorry, the plastic collar off, and I've got access to the coupler where it actually goes down to onto the input shaft into the steering gearbox. So I'm going to get that loose first, and then we'll drop the gearbox out of the way. Okay, I've got the nut loosened on the bottom of the Pitman arm where it ties to the drag link right there, and then up here where the coupler is, going to the input shaft on the gearbox itself, that's a 7/16 bolt. So what I've done is I started the truck up and I turned the steering column to where I could get access to the bolt, and I don't think you can see it, but there's a bolt up in there. Again, 7/16, it's going to be right back in the middle there behind that collar. That's the plastic sleeve that I slid up to get access to it. You can see I've got a little bit of a leak there too, which is good. The good thing I'm changing this out. But so next step is to loosen that. I'm going to go ahead and loosen the bolt. You have to take it all the way out, and I'll explain to you in a minute why. But the bolt has to come completely out, otherwise you're not going to get that coupler off of the input shaft on the steering gearbox. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that right now, and I'll bring you back when I get it loose. Okay, now that I got the bolt out of the collar here, all you have to do is get a screwdriver or something to pry this up. Now what I did do, let me stop right here, is when I rotated, when I turned the steering so I could get access to the bolt, so it was down here, it was a 7/16. I turned the steering so I could get access to it. Now once I got the bolt out and out of the way, I started the truck up and I turned the steering back straight forward. Okay, so the steering wheel is level and inside the truck. and both the tires are pointing straight forward. So now the steering is back to the normal straight position, and I can take the collar off because the bolt is out. So you just get a screwdriver and slide it up, and there's a slip joint farther up the shaft where the shaft actually fits either inside or outside. But just grab a screwdriver and slide this collar up and off of the input shaft on the steering gearbox. Come on, a little bit more, and there we go, and we're free. There we are. Okay, now with the steering column and the coupler free of the gearbox here, we can start taking the gearbox out. We're going to do 2 hose connections up top and then 3 big bolts on the back side over here. So stand by. Okay, got the steering gearbox loosened up here. They got the bolts out of it. It's ready to come off the frame. Let's see. On the right here on the Pitman arm, since I didn't grab a pickle fork, I don't have any, and I didn't grab one from O'Reilly. They'll loan you tools. You have to return them and they'll give you money back. But since I didn't have a pickle fork to drive that and separate that joint right there, all I did was I loosened the nut down on it and then drove it up with the hammer until it busted loose. And the problem with that is once you get that loose, you can't take the nut off because it just spins in the hole. It's a taper fit, and once you knock it up and loosen it up, you can't. There's nothing to keep the shaft from spinning. So what I had to do is get my angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, and once that was just hanging down, I just zipped it off right there, and now my Pitman arm joint is free to separate from the drive link, and we are good to go. So next is to take the hoses loose up top and get the box out of the way. All right, stand by. Okay, old steering gearbox out, new steering gearbox ready to go, new Pitman arm. I mentioned earlier when I was taking the collar off of the old one that you have to remove the bolt completely before you can slide it off, and I said I would explain why. If you look right here, sorry about the shaky cam, if you look right here, you'll see that there's a notch or a groove that is machined into the shaft. So when the bolt goes through on the collar, the bolt actually sits inside this shaft. So even if you loosen it, the clamping effect, that's bad. So even if you loosen it, all right, the clamping effect comes off the spindle here, but it's not going to release, it's not going to allow it to come off until you get that bolt out of the way and allow it to slide off, because otherwise the bolt is stuck right here and it won't allow it to pull out. All right. Number one. Number two, I mentioned that I was bringing the steering wheel. Once I got the bolt out, I had access to the bolt. Once I got the bolt out, I started the truck up and I took it back to the midpoint with my steering column, my steering wheel straight, perfectly straight. And the reason is, if you look, you'll see that there is a flat spot machined into the input shaft on the rebuilt, on the reman, okay? And on here's the factory, okay? And there's the machine flat spot right there. So that's the only one on the whole spline, on the whole input shaft. There's a flat spot right here. And the way I have these positioned, if you look right at them side by side, that one right here is lined up and this one right here is lined up, okay? So make sure that when you get ready to take your steering gearbox out, that you return your steering wheel to straight ahead, because it's going to line everything up for the one when you take it out, and then for the new one when you put it in. On the new Pitman arm as well, see if you can see this or not, but it is indexed, and you've got one on the top, the right, the bottom, the left. And the same thing, you have these detents on the excuse me, the output shaft where the Pitman arm bolts up, and it'll only fit one way. All right, so basically you're going to have an opportunity to get this thing on right, or 90 or 45 degrees out, 90, or 180 or 90. So if you get a reputable remanufacturer, they're going to go ahead, once they're done, they're going to center your new gearbox, and it should be dead set in the middle of travel based on the input shaft from lock to lock, okay? Lock to lock, it should be dead set in the middle, and whenever you put your new pitman arm, it should be on right here. If not, then you'll have to get a crescent wrench or carefully get onto this shaft and go full turns one way, full turns the other way, count it, divide by 2, and then get that right in the middle, all right? That's how you're going to center your new gearbox. This pitman arm lines up one way, and as long as you center your old shaft, your old gearing box, when you take it out and you center your steering column, the new one should go back in exactly the same way, and you can see that they're dead on right there. Boom and boom. All right. Okay, I'm going to get the big nut off. Oh, and by the way, these are not flare fittings, okay? These are not flare, they're not double flare. These are O-ring seals. New kit came with 2 new O-rings. 18 millimeter gets both of the supply and the return lines off of the steering gearbox. 18 millimeter. If you have a flare nut wrench, great, use it. But I was able to break this loose with an open-ended 18 millimeter wrench because it is an O-ring seal and not a flare nut, flare fitting. Okay. All right. Let's get these. Let's get this guy back in and see how things work. Okay. I've got the gearbox in. I've got the sway bar back in place. Hope the wind isn't too bad. I've got the fan going. It's still freaking 95 degrees in my garage at 1:30 in the morning. So, yeah, it's too dark under here, but the pitman arm is at an angle. When you get ready to put it back in, if you don't have it on the steering gearbox, when it goes in, it's going to be a bitch getting it on the output shaft of the steering gearbox. So just make sure that when it all goes back and you have it together. And the nut on the pitman arm, I didn't have the right metric size. Hang on a second. Take that back. I had a 32 millimeter, and I had to beat it on there on the nut with a hammer, and got it to where it would fit enough to where I could get it off of the old one and onto the new one, and then just kind of wiggle it off when I got it on there. So I'm not sure what size that is. 32 is going to be tight, and convert 32 into SAE. I'm not sure what that works out to, but this worked. 1/2-inch drive with my old Ingersoll Rand impact. Now, getting the steering column shaft back on to the input shaft for the gearbox. This is where I had a hell of a time. Now, I was tempted to just cut this collar off, but I wanted to keep it as original as possible, factory as possible, or whatever. And I had a hell of a time getting that collar back down over the input shaft of the steering gearbox. Now, coming off, I was able to use a screwdriver and wedge it and pry it off. But when I got ready to shove it back on, it did not want to cooperate. So what I did is I manhandled it for a little while and wiggled it and shoved it down, and I got to the point to where it just stopped. It wouldn't go on any further. So you can see right here, I put some vice grips on it, onto the steering column shaft, and then gradually started tapping on the vice grips to drive the steering column shaft down onto the collar, the input shaft into the steering box. So that helped a lot. I mean, I literally fucked with this for 30 minutes trying to get it down on there, but it was getting to the point where I was getting ready to cut that off, and I figured, nope, there's got to be a better way. So I put some vice grips on it and tapped it gingerly down with a hammer, and now it is fully seated. And I will get my bolt and thread it back in there. I'm going to go ahead and turn it, 180 degrees so I can get to it from the bottom. It's a little easier. Take that bolt out from the bottom. So I'm going to spin it around, put the bolt back in, and then hook my hoses up, and we're going to be good to go. All right, stand by. All right, you guys. Well, I had to come back and make another wrap-up video. I couldn't find any footage of the when I finished it the other night. So I say the other night, it's been a month. Of course, it's taken that long to get to the videos and get them edited and up, but yeah, all done. I've got about 60 miles on it, 60, 70 miles on it. I've run a few errands. When I first put it on, it was a little tight. It seemed like it was binding up a little bit, but it is working just fine now. It's loosened up quite a bit. Feels much better than it did, and doesn't drive like a brand new truck, but it feels a lot better than it did. So that's it. She's up and running. I've got some more videos coming up for the 97 Tahoe. Inspection stickers due this month, August, so I have to get the other catalytic converter replaced on it. I replaced one last year long enough to get it through inspection, and then sometime between then and now it's failed. The other one has failed, so I'll be replacing it. And some other stuff. Found a pretty good junkyard here in Austin, a salvage yard here in Austin. I'm going to be grabbing some stuff for the power seat, the regulators for the power seat, and some other things. So stick around. Thanks to my new subscribers. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If this video helps out, you think you might have some use for some additional 97 Tahoe videos, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get them as they come. All right, everybody take it easy. Peace out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Adios.